All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this event hosted collaboratively by the Global Inclusion Diversity Team, the Employee Networks, U2Q, and AbilityQ. And today's event is moderated by Reed Thomas. He's a software engineer and also the U2Q San Diego president. And my name is Sachin Chugh. I am the co-chair for AbilityQ, which is geared towards providing the support for the Qualcomm employees who are the caregivers for differently abled. And a few years ago, at one of the Qualcomm Summer on the Lawn events, I came across this booth for AbilityQ. It provided a lot of great information about the resources that are available in Qualcomm as well as outside. And that helped me a lot because I have a differently abled son, so I got a lot of benefit out of it. And in recognition of October being the Disability Employee Awareness Month, today we have a great personality here joining us on stage. When she was 9 years old, Lacey was diagnosed with a form of cancer that was so rare that it didn't have a survival rate. And she lost her leg to cancer, but she didn't lose her will to compete. She went on to receive a cheerleading scholarship to University of Denver before becoming a long jumper for the Team USA. Now she's a 6-time USA national champion, a world record holder for the pole vault, American record holder for long jump. She has competed in Rio in 2016 Paralympic Games, also in 2019 in Pan Am Games. Recently, she was named for the Team USA for the 2019 World Championships in Dubai, and also for the 2020 Paralympic Games in Tokyo. Now, before we bring Lacey on the stage, here's a quick 2-minute video for Lacey Henderson.
I was 9 years old when I was diagnosed with a soft tissue cancer. It was called synovial sarcoma. Like, I complained to my parents off and on that my leg hurt, but I was always active. I was always doing sports. We finally took an MRI, and that's where the images showed that I had like a light bulb-sized tumor just caged in my kneecap. At the time, I was the rarest case of that cancer, and there's no survival rate. We had to amputate because my tumor didn't respond at all. A couple months later, like, I was in the 5th grade. We got really into like playing basketball at recess, and I remember like we're all sitting there. The team captains are picking their teams, and then like these kids, like, they kept getting like picked off the sides, and I'm still waiting there, and I was like, all right, like, I got this leg, I get it, like, let's be realistic. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm the last one left. It dawned on me then that other people saw me as different, but I knew that I was still the same person. I want my message to be to anybody who's ever been told they're too much of something or not enough of something else. That's not real. That's not true. You steer your own ship. Like, you're the one that gets to decide who you are and what you do. I'm at a point now where it's like it's a weird mix of like focus and tenacity, but at the same time of gratitude and of celebration. When I'm getting set, when it's my turn to run down the runway, I think power, push as hard as you can, push as hard as you can. For those first 4 steps, maintain posture, stay composed, and then you get to the board, you just think fly, jump, go. When I'm in that headspace, it's almost like I've transformed from being confused and not understanding why people didn't think I could do things to being able to stand up from that blacktop and being like, watch me.
All right, so now please welcome Lacey Henderson.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I might need a little help for when I change slides, because I was going to play the same video for my introduction. So that is done. So I guess, should I just ask for the next slide? Probably should have. This is like one question that they were like, do you need any help? I'm like, I was like, totally got it. Yes, hello, thank you. Okay, next, great, fantastic. It's so funny, I mean, I'm gonna talk about my story, but it's like, this morning here at Qualcomm has been incredible. I have just been blown away at everything. Let's see, first of all, so I've actually I had a friend actually that works for Google, and no, Indeed, and I went to their holiday party a couple years ago in Scottsdale, and I had to ask what Indeed was, and he was like, oh yeah, I forgot you haven't had a real job yet, Lacey, and it's, you know, he's not that far off. So, we'll see. So just press, okay, we'll go back. That's me. So I guess that other slide's not gonna play. That's okay. This is me at the age of 9. The pictures before were me just like any normal kid. Had a very average childhood, I would say. I mean, but again, like, I think we all think we have average childhoods, but the deeper you look into your family sometime, you're like, ooh, maybe we're not that normal. I grew up with my brother, Trax, in the hat. His name is Trax, that is his official name, Trax. My dad was like a track freak, and he went to Olympic trials for pole vault, and he legally named my brother Trax when he was born, and my middle name is Fields. So we have some like little like neurotic tendencies. I was actually lucky. I was the second born, so my mom was like, no, I got to name the girl. So I guess Fields is my middle name, Trax and Fields. It could have been worse. He could have been a hockey coach. My name could have been like Helmet or Puck or something. So, you know, count your blessings when you can. And I always grew up athletic. And whether or not I wanted to, it was just something that was always around. When I was doing a speed camp with my dad, who was coaching, a coach noticed that I was limping. And I had mentioned off and on to my parents that, you know, my leg had hurt. And when you're just a little kid, always doing sports, like you think, oh, maybe I'm sore from soccer, maybe it's growing pains. We never thought anything of it. Eventually we went to the doctor, and after some failed tests and an MRI showed that I had a light bulb-sized tumor inside of my kneecap. As the video explained, which is great that I have that now, I don't even have to tell my own story. It was the rarest form of that cancer called synovial sarcoma at the time. There was no survival rate, there was really no prognosis, and I was put on experimental chemotherapy trials, which leads me to this photo here, right shortly after my amputation. I was killing it on crutches, that tie-dye shirt, and that was my favorite cat pendant. So, I mean, I may have had cancer, but I never really got any cooler while I was growing up. And the cancer experience at the age of 9 is so weird, because 9 is like, it's a weird age because you can understand serious concepts. You can understand that it's serious, that we talked about dying, we talked about the amputation, and for so long we were like, no way, not gonna amputate. That's out of the question. I did 3 rounds of chemo, and I started having kidney failure, liver failure. Everything was just falling apart. So amputation soon became the only option to get out of cancer land. And it's weird to think now, because at the age of 30, like, I have way more emotional baggage with my body now than I did when I was 9. So by the time they're like, the leg's gotta go, I was like, take it. I'm like, it's brought me nothing but hardship at this time. So my parents ultimately let me decide, and I was the person that decided to amputate my leg 2 days later after that meeting. A lot of people's favorite stories. My brother and I were always close, and he was a huge reason why I got back into sports and was so active so early, because we just always were running around. In that meeting for talking about my amputation, he raises his little hand, and he's older than me, but I was bigger than him for like way too long. He's taller than me now, so he caught up. But he raised his hand, and he was like, I know that they do heart transplants. Is there any way that I can give my leg to my sister? And all the doctors, yeah, they're like, oh. My mom's crying, and he looks at me, and he was like, I want the robot leg. And of course, like, being like siblings, you're like, no, I want the robot leg. Like, no, I don't want your stupid leg. So I got the robot leg, and shortly thereafter, I finished chemo. We had to, and I was fit with a prosthetic leg. And my parents are funny. They were born, my dad's 74, and he's like, they're both teachers, coaches, and they're like, okay, you have to find something to do after school. It'll be a sport. So figure out what you like. And when I was back on 2 feet, literally, again, I did everything. I played every sport. We played recess basketball, the famous picked last story. I played volleyball. I did a bunch of things. And that moment when I was at that recess being picked last, that was when I realized that nobody in my peer group saw me as me. They saw me as this. They saw me as this cancer kid. And I mean, there's a part of me talking about like disability inclusion and normalization that I want people to know, like, I get it, because I've been on both sides. Like, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't understand. I knew that cancer was a serious sickness, but I was like, oh, people with cancer are bald, and I have all my hair, so they're probably wrong. I've had this misconnect where you always hear about things happening to people. You always hear about cancer, about accidents, about disability, and it seems so far away from you. It's like, that happens to other people. That doesn't happen to me. And then when I realized people saw me as I was that person, it didn't make sense. And I call this disability denial. I decided to be in disability denial for a really long time because I was given a leg back. And the way they sold it to me was pretty good, to be honest. When you talk about amputation and you're like, hey, you can play sports, you break your leg, you get a new one. Like, that's a pretty good sale. That was pretty basic to me. It didn't make sense, because I knew that even though I had gone through this experience, I came out of it. The leg is the reason why I got out of cancer land. I didn't feel like it fundamentally changed me. And like, the thinking was so simple at that age. You know, you're just like, I'm not changed, but I didn't understand that there's a huge fundamental part of me that was like, that I can now be this new person, this new body, but still be who I essentially am. And then something shortly after cancer that was equally as profound happened to me that really kind of set my life on a trajectory. This is from the movie Bring It On. And I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with it, but this was a life-changing experience for me. This movie came out, I don't know, 2002 maybe, 2003. Digital, on Qualcomm, digital. I just learned about that today. Thank you, Qualcomm, you're welcome. That's what I decided the new slogan is. Bring It On came out. I'm in the movies with my mom, and I'm like getting hot flashes, the room's shrinking in on me. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. These girls are cool, they're sassy, they're doing flips, they got cute uniforms. Like, I wanted to be a part of that. And I told my parents, we had track and field, we had soccer, we had all these traditional sports. Didn't know a lot about the world of cheerleading, probably because of how expensive it was. But I told my mom, I'm like, that is what I want to do. And my parents, I give them a hard time, because they do come from an older generation, but something that was important that they taught me with that was that whatever it is you want, Lacey, you work hard enough, you find a way, you'll make it happen. Just tell us where we need to drop you off. Like, that's it. Everything else, like, don't ask for anything else. But, I decided, I signed up for gymnastics classes, I learned tumbling, and I cheered all throughout high school. I was a national varsity cheerleader, and then I got a scholarship for it at the University of Denver. I never looked into the history, but probably one of the first above-the-knee amputees to have an athletic scholarship at the Division I level. So that was really cool. And it was, thank you. It was the best. Cheerleading still is such a special place in my heart. We were sassy, we danced, we had poms, it was great. And I am coming into my senior year of college, and I realize now that I've had a very unique experience. As a person with a disability, I had this scholarship. I decided, I'm like, how can I give back? And I realized I grew up doing traditional sports. I was able to do whatever I wanted. I didn't see myself as disabled again. And I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give back to the children. So I started volunteering. My senior year of college, I volunteered at It's a really long name, Patty Rosbach Amputee Coalition Youth Camp. We just call it AMP Camp for short. So there's a group of us counselors, and AMP Camp changed my life. And anybody who's ever gone to summer camp knows that like it's the best. When you're an adult and you go to camp, it's even better. But something that was really important that happened, there's me doing the bolt arm. Something that happened at AMP Camp was I saw a bunch of kids running around on running legs. And I had seen running legs in my prosthetist's office about like with advertising, whatever. And every time you see somebody with a running leg, like on a track, it's just like, you see, just like marketing works all the time. Because you see somebody in an ad and you're like, oh, they know what they're doing with their life. Good for them. I had never seen just a normal person on a running leg. Like it always seemed like that was somebody who knew they had talent, knew they were good, and wanted to do it. And this all coincidentally, just the timing that the universe had this at this point in my life was great because I'm graduating, it was 2011, at like, a little bit during the recession, so like nobody with an undergraduate degree is doing a great job finding work. And I had a great time in college. I had a fantastic time in college. And so I taught my dad one family party how to play beer pong. I was of age. If you don't know what beer pong is, maybe find a time to Google it. But it's nothing crazy. It's just like a fun game, but you do drink, there's like beer involved. And honestly, my dad was smoking me at beer pong. And I was getting my feelings hurt over it. And somehow, like, the only way that I felt like I could fight back was not by any sort of like actual skill, but was by trash talking. So somehow the conversation my dad and I had with each other was, who is a better athlete? And something that I think my dad did a better job of instilling in me was just like unapologetic, like overly inflated self-confidence, which has helped for a lot of things. Including this particular instance, because he's like, Lacey, you couldn't pole vault 2 feet. I'm like, 2 feet's like here. Like, that's like offensive. Like, come on. But again, only my family would just readily have like a pole vault pit and poles, like, be like, nah, like, I'll show you. So the next day, his beer pong partner actually was a coach, so I was like, yeah, come through. I didn't have a running leg at the time, but I jumped my first jump 6 feet, so that he will have to hear that for the rest of his life. But I fell in love with that feeling. I felt like flying. It reminded me so much of when I was doing gymnastics that like it felt freeing, and I wanted to keep doing it. I got a running leg, and I started jumping, and I started jumping into 60-meter races just to get faster. Like the faster you are on the runway, the higher you jump. I avoided physics for the majority of my life, but I'm learning it now in athletics, and boy, it could have come in handy. Learning about it earlier. And I put in this picture. There's me. This is actually at a Rio semifinal, and I should have just put the video because I had lived a life up until this point where like progress had been like this. It's been relatively easy. You set things out, you achieve your goals, you face adversity, but you're creative and you overcome it. And things are very simple. And I had actually gone into my first ever Paralympic race. There's like the glorified version and there's like the actual what happened version. So I'll tell you what actually happened. My first ever race, and I'm lined up next to somebody with a prosthetic on their left side, on my right side where my prosthetic is. And my dad's like really well known in Colorado, so I had been like also doing a couple of like cheer competition, judging cheer competition. So the announcers I had known from cheer comps, they were just like fluffing me up. They're like, Lacey Henderson's daughter of track legend and like University of Denver. I get like this huge intro, and of course at 21 I'm just like, yes, like that's me. I get like this 5-minute just like huge intro. We line up. I get the blocks, gun goes off, bam, like immediately hit the ground. And everybody's just racing, and I'm like, man, they really had to do that whole intro like that. God. And that really should have been a metaphor for the way that like my experience with disability sport had been. And it was crazy because I came in too being like, I'm a D1 athlete, same thing. I learned to pole vault the first day. And I got creamed in my first Paralympic race. They let me come back the second day, race again, and that was where I qualified for the London Games. And so confidence back up. I'm like, can't tell me nothing. So my third race, which I tell people is my second, but it was my third, I go to Paralympic Nationals, and same thing. I'm getting in that line, and I'm like, can't tell me nothing. Can't wait to make these teams. Go in the race, and I'm racing against, Paralympics is crazy because not one disability is created equally. So I'm racing against bilateral amputees, amputee equivalents. So I'm against a bilateral amputee. I'm like, no legs, no problem. I'm about to smoke her. I get in this race, she just annihilates me on this race, and I'm like, dang, she's so fast. And I realized then, I didn't know anything about Paralympic sport. I just wanted to pole vault at first. And then I'm just inherently way overly competitive. So I found my way into Paralympic sport, and my misconception before I even knew what it was that Paralympic sport was equivalent to Special Olympics, was equivalent to something that, so para basically is any sort of physical disability, and special is more intellectual developmental disability. I didn't even know there were differences in that. That was why I didn't even consider myself as a disabled person, because I didn't feel like I was in any sort of category like that. And then when I realized racing girls with no legs and losing, and not just losing, but like losing really badly, I was like, oh, this is serious. So I really do have like, I'm just way overly competitive. So I'm like, this is not how my story ends. No. So I joined a bunch of track training groups. I started training. I took it seriously. And I avoided long jump for a couple years. I couldn't do pole vault. It's not an event for para. But I avoided long jump because, true to my cheerleading background, I didn't want to get dirty. So, and that's like such a lame thing, but that's like the honest to God truth. I didn't want to get dirty. I finally get talked into doing long jump in 2013. And by my third competition, I broke a 17-year-long American record. So the gymnastics and cheer background really translated well with those jumps. And from 2013, that was where my progress started coming up again. I started making teams, and I'll do like the condensed version. Rio was a crazy year for me. I had moved to Phoenix at this time. I was training with both able-bodied and disabled athletes in a really exclusive elite training group in Phoenix, and track had become my life. And regardless of ability or disability, we were all doing the same thing. It was the same event, the same distance, the same training. And I took it so seriously. Like, that was not just my job, that was my being. And I had a bunch of family stuff going on in the background. My parents ended up divorcing when I was 25, and like, I had never been a child of divorce, but after experiencing just any sort of different adversity, I didn't realize how hard adversity is, and like that life doesn't stop serving dishes of life to you after you face one hardship. I was like, great, cancer, got it done early, fantastic, it's gonna be easy. And that wasn't the case, and I had put so much of my focus in my life into who I was as an athlete. I went to Rio, I went to trials, and just like bombed, did not do well, and initially did not make the team, and it crushed me. I had just become, that was my identity, that was everything I was. So I did like an eat, pray, love journey. I decided that summer, so I went home and like reconciled some stuff with my family, and then we went to Italy. My family's Italian, so I had a family reunion there, and I ate copious amounts of pasta, drank a lot of wine, like a lot of wine. and things started feeling better. I decided that year, I was also in a dumpster fire of a relationship at that time, and he was going to the Olympics, and I was like, you know what, the Olympics are canceled in my life. So I bought a ticket to Argentina and went down there, and I was like, okay, Olympics are canceled, don't want to hear about it. 4 days into my trip in Argentina, I come back and look at my phone. I have a bunch of missed calls and text messages from the director of athletics for US Para. And what is it like whenever you get a call or like a text from your boss, the first thing you see, you're like, oh, I'm definitely in trouble. Like, do I need a lawyer? Like, what's it gonna be? So I call her and she's like, hey, like, what's up? I'm like, nothing. What'd you call for? She's like, did you hear the news? I'm like, no, there's no news where I am. I made sure of that. She's like, have you heard about Russia? And I was like, who? She's like, the Russian delegation's not going to Rio. Right now our team has 1 slot. And so it was like I was the first to be picked last again on this team. She's like, do you want to go? And I was like, could you hold on for a second? Like, I've never experienced that moment where you get like such shocking but exciting news that you're like, sorry, you're like that little like rainbow ball just like processing. You're like, please hold. She's like, hurry. It was like 2 weeks before we needed to leave for Rio. So I text my sports psych, my coach, one of my training partners, and I'm like, what do I do? And of course, like I have this coach who's like, he's a good old boy, but he's kind of like Yoda, like he talks in riddles, and like that's the only way he communicates. So he was like, I'm like, what do I do? He's like, you steer your own ship. And I'm like, all right, not helpful. I'm gonna need something a little bit more direct. My sports psych texted me and he's like, Lacey, he's like, you find your leg and you go to the Olympics. I was so nervous. I had like that flare up of like what's called imposter syndrome, where I didn't feel like I was ready. Like I had like a lot of wine in Italy and did not train. And my training partner at that point had texted me. He's like, forget training, jump anyways. And I was like, you know what, that's a pretty good point. So I went to Rio. I made finals. I was the first female American to ever make finals in a long jump competition at the Paralympics, which was crazy. And I also qualified for the races, and this is the only picture I have from it because I was in last place during this race. But that summer, my Eat, Pray, Love summer, like basically just taught me so much about who I was and that we're so much more than our bodies. And like I had transcended still in disability denial to embracing my disability, but then that was who I was. Like that was like the sport was who I was, and it had to be, and that didn't make me a good athlete. What made me a good athlete, what got me to finals in long jump was the fact that like I embraced my family, I embraced the hardship. I had to learn new coping mechanisms because surviving cancer is really only one skill, but it doesn't help when you're trying to survive your parents' crazy divorce. And I had learned that I was so much more than just one thing, and that is something that our new projects that I'm working on now as far as disability and normalizing disability, because the one common thread through my disability experience has been like, this is just my life, this is who I am, and who we are is more than just one thing, it's more than just one identity. This is like an advanced level thing. How do I make this play? Is that possible? I'm so sorry. I was like, how do I make my videos play? But there's more than one video. Oh, thank you. Now I'm gonna have to tell you when to stop too, because this is how you know I haven't had a job. Like, I'm like, I don't know how to cut. This was on Google Slides, because I don't even have the PowerPoint. So here's the story. This is a very good highlight story from Rio. So hopefully we can get sound. Maybe.
I'm disabled. At the Paralympics, and finally we were like, listen, we're all disabled. We're like,
right, that's not an excuse here.
You go to the back. Like, we were like, listen, we're all.
Oh,
no.
I can do it. Thank you, guys.
So I remember waiting in line at McDonald's at the games, and there was this athlete actually from Egypt, and I remember she was in a chair, and she kept trying to cut us, and we were like, no. And she, we finally were like, no, you can't cut us. She's like, no. I'm disabled. At the Paralympics, and finally we were like, listen, we're all disabled. We're like,
right, that's not an excuse here.
You go to the back. Like, we're the ones that have to stand, actually, so you have to go to the back.
Okay. Okay. Is there a way to pause it?
Disabled.
I'll stop touching it. Okay. This is some advanced level PowerPoint. That's one of my favorite stories from Rio. So that's actually, that woman's name is Brianna Solinaro. She is a Taekwondo Paralympian with cerebral palsy. And she hasn't made it to a games yet, so she was asking me just like what it's like. And like ironically, there's like a giant McDonald's just in the middle of the village. And it's so funny because Paralympics, I had said this thing a while back, I'm like, Olympics makes history and Paralympics changes it. Because we not only are elite athletes, we have come from so many different demographics. It's crazy because disability affects everybody. Like there's every country's delegation, and the one thing that we have in common is not just our athletic ability, but it's the fact that we go out every day and it's a fight. And for some countries, it's way easier than other countries. So I mean, like homegirl from Egypt, like wasn't wrong, but also no, you're not gonna cut us in line. We've been waiting way too long for those Egg McMuffins. And that was where like, it dawned on me too, like there are people within the disability community that still look at it as a black and white, simple aspect, and it's not. There's so many nuances to disability. There's not one disability that's created equally. So hopefully, this will go to the next slide. I'm sorry, who's ever back there helping me? Thank you so much. I have like 2 more of these videos, so it's gonna be colorful. Okay, boom. Oh, dang, okay. Life would be tragic if it weren't funny. Does anybody know who said this quote? Stephen Hawking. I remember the first time I found that out and I was like, oh, first of all, true. Second of all, true. Stephen Hawking, like, talk about a story. We don't need to go into it. I feel like as a millennial, the kind of research we do now, if it's not on Google, you just watch the movie. So I recently watched the movie. I feel fully up to date with Stephen Hawking. Not quite at his level of intelligence, though, trust me. That quote was so profound to me, especially from whom it came, because life isn't easy for anybody. And it's so easy to look at somebody with a disability, look at somebody who looks different than you and be like, oh, that looks really hard. That looks super hard. But if you look back, if you look on your life, like your life's hard too. And there's certain things sometimes I'll say, and I know this is like kind of terrible, but I'm like, my disability is my prosthesis, and like that's way easier than a lot of other things that people have to face, and it's true. Nobody's life is easy, and if you let the objectively sad parts consume you, it'll eat you up, and it's true. You have to laugh, and that was something we learned early with my cancer experience. You have to laugh. There are so many funny things about disability as well, and like that's been something that I try to bring to the table. I don't know if it's intentional or just like impulsively my personality to just be funny, but I think when we are able to laugh at things, and I think when we are able to have lighthearted conversations, it makes it less scary. It makes something that seems so foreign and so distant from you not so far away. So I have another video. I come over here like there's anything I can do. Like I can help.
Special needs also doesn't make sense to me because I'm not really sure why my needs are more special than someone else's needs. I always say like my actual special needs are please fan me and feed me grapes.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
That's a great need.
Yeah.
I am starting to feel like I have a need like that as well.
Right?
All right, just the first part. So her name is Emily Ladau. She is a disability activist in New York City. I had the pleasure of sitting down with her at South by Southwest, which is like, South by Southwest makes everybody feel super important, which is kind of cool. But that was an incredible conversation that I had with her because we talked a lot about the rhetoric of disability, and I had the pleasure of sitting down with some of the people here at Qualcomm today talking about the importance of words. And some people in the disability community, and just like, I feel like in 2019 in general, like you can't win. Like you use one word that was like PC last year, but this year it's the worst thing ever. So like there's just no way to win. And I think so much of what's important is like being able to feel comfortable having the conversation and being like, here, listen, help me out. I don't know anything about this. Please help me understand. And Emily does a really good job talking about that. Some people hate the term special needs. Some people like it. Some people don't really care. There's so many things. And it seems when you aren't in the disability community, like it's such a high mountain to navigate. And I want you to know, it's okay. We're people just like you. And we're here to help. And we're here to answer questions. And if you want to fan us and feed us grapes, like that's totally fine too, because that sounds like a fantastic special needs. I wanted to update you on a couple more things in my life. This is me actually this September in the Lima Pan American Games. I I've had a crazy year. This is like the craziest, longest track season ever. So I'm heading to Dubai at the end of this month for World Championships, and then Tokyo is on deck. And sports are so weird because, you know, it's like there's like one main objective, and it's like to win. Like that's that's pretty simple. But on your progress and your journey on trying to just win, you learn so many more lessons. And Lima, this year's been crazy. I've been living in Texas. I've been trying to deal with leg stuff, been trying to get coached remotely. It's been crazy. But I ended up walking away with a silver medal. Second place? Hell yeah! So it all really came full circle back to bring it on. I really kept thinking that too. I was like, second place, hell yeah. Not bad. Oh, and also, I was just visiting my family. I had my medal in my backpack, so if you guys want to come take pictures with it later and come look at it, it's somewhere, hopefully. TSA found it, so it's here now. And it's been an amazing journey. I've also now been working with one more project from these videos I've been showing you. And this is the last one, I promise. I gotta find a way to embed those, huh? There's probably a way to do that.
In my family, we were shopping in Temecula recently, and apparently there was like some gang people, and they were watching, and they were making fun of us signing because we were signing. And so my wife pulled out 100 signs, basic booklet that we have here at Johnson Press that we produced, and she walked over and gave it to the kids. And as we walked away, we looked, and they were all looking. And so they looked, and they said, "Hi, my name." So they were learning right there on the spot. And it was so like, cool. Hey, we can get past this.
Thank you. So that gentleman's name is Joe Danis, and he is a deaf entrepreneur actually here in San Diego. He has a company that started as a t-shirt company, and now they do a bunch of, like, I'm gonna get it wrong, but like a bunch of educational books, videos, everything with ASL and deaf culture. That was an incredible interview. He is amazing. All of these interviews, I've just been like, wow, like there's so many really super smart people, way smarter than me. And he's another person that just blew me away. And he's somebody now that I'm finding so much more in 2019 that we're, as a community, as a culture, as a society, we're banding together, and we're here to help advocate not only for ourselves, but for each other. And Joe is doing an awesome job trying to spread deaf culture and diversity in the whole world, in the whole community. And that was something that this morning really blew me away with our meeting. Qualcomm is just like, oh, holy smokes. I'm still like spinning from our conversation this morning. I've never seen a company, well, I've never had a job, but I've also never seen, I babysat in high school. I had jobs, but not a real one. But I've never seen or heard of a community like this that's so inclusive and that actively wants to create space for people, and that really is where innovation comes from. That's where problems are solved when people have different perspectives on things. That's where we can really change the world, and that's really been something that's blown my mind this morning, and that has been a project now that I've been working on for picked last in gym class. I started a podcast and a video web series this year. Something that I learned in 2016 was like, yeah, okay, so I'm a long jumper, but I also have a lot of other qualities that I can bring and a lot of other things that I can give to the world. Sport doesn't have to be my one thing, and this has been an incredible project that we have taken, and I just showed a couple videos, but we have talent. I wanted it to be normal conversations about the stories of struggles before success, because if there's one thing that brings us together, it's that we've all felt like a loser, we've all felt like an idiot, we've all felt like we didn't belong in a group. And so my guests are about 50% people with disabilities, and then 50% ABs, able-bodied people. That's what we call you guys, the muggles. But we like you. You're not that bad. But we have talent like former NBA players, musicians, actors, comedians. We have, just crazy. It's been a fantastic year, to be honest. And if you need something to listen to while you're pretending to work, you can listen to my show. we also have the video aspect as well that have closed captioning and everything. And it's just been a really great journey. It's been amazing to see the fruition of all of this hard work, all these projects come to groups like you, to come to groups that people that want to change, that want to create change in space for this world, to make it a better place. Because the thing is like, no one's one hardship or anything is exclusive to disability, to this minority or the other minority, because like we're all in it together. And I mean, it's been really a true gift. And one of my favorite statistics about disability is that we're actually the world's largest minority. We take everybody, and the only difference between me and you is like one moment. But I think I read something today, 1.3 billion people are living with disabilities, and that's a lot of people. I can't even, like, once you get to the B's, like my brain doesn't like actually go like understand how many people that is. And for companies like Qualcomm that are so big, so innovative, and just global, to recognize that and to want to make space for the table is truly something really special. And it's been an honor to be a part of it just for the day. So I want to thank you guys for having me. Thank you. That should be it.
Awesome. Thank you, Lacey, for coming out here.
Thank you, yeah.
So we'll just open this up to a Q&A session, if you want to have a seat. So on behalf of Qualcomm and Global Inclusion and Diversity, we want to thank you so much for coming out here to speak to us. It's been an honor to host you. So I guess starting from the beginning, your journey began right around when you were 9 years old, when you first got diagnosed. How did you take that as a 9-year-old?
It was crazy just because, like, I was always like a little neurotic as a 9-year-old, but like also didn't complain. I minded very well. So my parents, I'd be like, my leg hurts. They'd be like, it's growing pains, you're fine. I'm like, oh, I guess it's growing pains, I'm fine. And when the word cancer started getting thrown around, it was always in the background, but I was like this really weird kid. I watched 2020 a lot when I was a little kid. It was also like, why did my parents let me watch that by myself? So when we were like talking about biopsy and cancer, like the biggest thing I was afraid of was I saw a special on people waking up in surgery, and I was like,
oh my gosh.
that's like, what stress for a 9-year-old? So that was like, I remember that was my biggest fear at first.
Did the word cancer resonate with you at all?
I just knew, like I recognized it as like bald people, and like I didn't really know. And so once if we found out it was cancer, I actually found out I was waking up in the recovery room, and they talked about it. I didn't wake up in surgery, so I was like, all right, check one. That was a close one. I remember like the nurse was like on my machine, and I woke up and I said, do I have cancer? And she goes, yes. And it was like, yes, honey. Like it was like very casual the way she said it. And I had been so busy worrying about waking up in surgery. Like I was like, oh.
Focusing on other things.
Yeah, and it hit me. I was like, my life is about to change forever. I remember like turning around and just crying into my pillow and being like, just terrified, just scared. And when they started talking about amputation and everything, that was another thing. First, I did not want to lose my hair. That was gone, out the gates. Like, that was gone. And then when they talked about the leg, like, that was something, it just, like, it wasn't an option. And we never had been around people with disabilities. I didn't know what life would look like as an amputee. I never knew amputees. Like, it scared me. But when it became my only option, it was like, you just learn, like, when things hit hard like that, like cancer, like, you take every day as it comes, because every day with cancer is, like, some new catastrophe. And when it finally came time to do the amputation, it was my ticket out. So it was fear turned into, like, relief.
Yeah, and you say you had an opportunity with your parents to decide. You got to weigh in on the decision.
Yeah.
How did you even weigh that?
I think, honestly, this is a weird thing to say, but I think if you are gonna have cancer, like being a 9-year-old is probably the best time to do it. Because it just like, it was way less emotional for me. I think once I got over the fear of it and the denial. I mean, there's a part of denial where, because we talked about dying, we talked about death, but I was like, well, you know, cancer is just a sickness, and when you're a sick person, you just get better. So like dying, I was like, yeah, not me. Like, no, I don't, who's got the time?
Wasn't on the table.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we talked about amputation, you know, I think it was harder for my parents, because they'll talk about it. They're like, you know, we brought you into this world whole, and now we have to sign a piece of paper to take a part of that away. And for me, I was like, this is my ticket out of cancer land. Like, let's do it.
Focusing on something else.
Exactly. My dad's a big joker. He was like, you know, as soon as they told me that your survival rate would go from maybe 20% to 70%. He was like, I told him, I was like, get the axe right there. I'm like, oh God, Dad.
So I guess through your journey, was there a mentor that you had with you? I mean, it sounds like your dad was a
My
big
dad and I are
influence in your
super
life.
close, for better, for worse. I think, it was, everything shifted. There was always an evolution in everything that I did. And when I was sick, my mom really took care of me. She was my caregiver. We did at-home chemo.
Okay.
She and I were just attached to each other, and we had to be. And then by the time I got my prosthetic, that was when my dad took over, and like Coach Dad came. And then from there, it's been, coaches, training partners, and just mentors along the way. I think every season of life, somebody new comes in that's more appropriate, that can help you develop
During
stronger
that
as a
stage of your
person.
life. And
Yeah.
it's moving forward. So I guess from middle school through high school and even through college, you've always been involved in sports and just activities. I mean, you did competitive cheerleading in college, and then you also have done track and field. So what drove you to do that? To continue to want to participate in these events?
That's been another evolution. Like in the beginning, for sure. Like in the beginning for cheer, I wanted to be like the cute girl with pom-poms and like do little dances. Like that was it. I loved that. It was great. Great fuel for that time. And then when I started track, I was like, I want to be in the magazines. I want to have the medals. I want to be on the podium. It was a lot harder to do it than I thought it would be. And as I've matured, even as an athlete, it's been how do you make this story affect others? Like, how can you affect others through this? Because track is crazy because it's a one-person sport. But even you guys are talking about so many different departments here have to come together to make change. And when you see one athlete doing well on the track, it's not just them out there. It's coaches, it's physios, it's my sports psychologist a lot, it's partners, it's your dog, it's everybody. It's a group effort. It takes a village just to get one person to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not alone up there.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you were doing like competitive cheerleading, like in college, like how did you normalize your disability with everything else?
I think growing up with it, like the adults were like a little passive aggressive and talked to my parents. Like they kind of handled it amongst themselves. And the cheer coach at Denver had seen me in high school do competitions.
Okay.
But I did every skill that everybody else could do. And I mean, it took me longer to learn some of the more physical stuff in gymnastics, but we just always approached it. It's like, here's the requirement, and like, you do it or you don't. And I had a coach when I started with my training program in Phoenix that he said the same thing. I kind of like regressed a little bit, thinking that like my very special needs needed to be met. And he was like, listen, he's like, I've worked with a lot of para. I'm going to treat you like all the other athletes. He's like, when you can't do something, we'll cross that bridge. And like that is yet to be a problem. There's been accommodations like for lifting and like, like if I have to do a step up, like my right leg, the angle will be different. But other than that, like small adjustments.
It's normal training.
It's just been, you just navigate it the way that you know best.
Yeah. So you recently were doing some work in Phoenix, you said? Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about the Paralympics program there?
Yeah. So. Track is crazy. There was a big elite program there. It's called the World Athletic Center, and now it's called Altus. Now it's primarily education, because I'm in Texas now. But a couple of my training partners were invited. They're able-bodied athletes to go train at this elite facility, and they were my coaches. And I was like, what about me? So I had asked them if they wanted to start a para program, and they quickly let me know that no, they didn't. They were not interested. And just, again, who I am, like squeaky wheel gets the oil. I'm like, so by no, do you mean? And eventually we had a really elite international Paralympic program alongside able-bodied athletes. And that was something where I learned, like, everybody wins when you train together. Everybody wins, everybody learns, and everybody pushes each other. Yeah, like the motivators are different, but it's important to have each other to get through. It's like we all have one common goal, make the games. You all have one common goal. Those are your battle buddies. Like, it's not that fun to train in 100. Yeah, exactly. And it's 120 degrees outside. It's not that fun. You need to have like everybody there working, and it's just like when everybody's a common goal, but they come from different backgrounds. It just makes it so simple, and it makes it easy, and it makes just the production of it. It makes the performance and the efficiency of it just way easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you've been doing a lot of work, obviously, with Paralympics. You have a couple competitions coming up. So the World Championships are in Dubai coming up.
Yes.
So, I mean, you have a lot of traveling going on between competitions, events like this. How do you manage to take care of yourself during all of that? So self-care is huge, just like as a functioning human.
A big thing for me is sleep. Like there's something that we talk about in training, and you can only recover as hard as you train. So like the best part of recovery is like sleep is the best free recovery you can do. Your body literally repairs itself while it's sleeping, so that's always huge. In the beginning of the season, we were even talking about it, like sometimes we aim for like 10 hours a night, which depending on the time of year, it's not that hard. Yeah, I'm like, it sounds like that's not common for you guys here. That's like not a normal thing. But you have to take it easy. Like you have to basically take inventory of your mind, your body, and your spirit, like where you're at. Travel is hard. Travel runs you down. When you're exhausted, like I understand little babies crying in restaurants and crying on the plane, man. Like it's hard. It's hard to be tired. I still work really closely with my sports psychologist. Turns out a sports psychologist is just a normal psychologist, but like when your job is sports, like that's
They know about sports?
Yeah, they like know a little bit about sports. We'll do FaceTime stuff. You know, you have strategies coming into things. You basically have, I've heard certain businesses do this, like we call them KPIs, key performance indicators, so things to focus on.
Definitely have those.
Or not key performance inhibitors, things to try to avoid. You basically, I mean, you map out trajectories, and I think for me, like I do well with structure like that, but you also need to be realistic, and I think the biggest thing is just like keeping recovery kind of at the top, because you can always train. There's so many times you see advertisements, people are like grind every day, no days off, and like that's a great way to get injured and like be burnt out and not be sustainable in a
So you
career.
think there's such a thing as overtraining?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and like that's the worst way to get injured. That's the stupidest way you can get injured. And yeah, the biggest thing is just really like making sure fatigue is not a huge factor. You're trying your best for nutrition. It's hard to travel and eat well, but mostly besides sleep, like just be realistic and give yourself a break. It's so easy to be hard on yourself. It's so easy to be like, I'm not doing enough, and being able to be fine with sitting still and just recovering from life as it comes, like that's a huge part.
Yeah, so do you have any traditions that you do before these competitions or any rituals?
I like to make really like silly kind of stupid playlists. So right now, if anybody, like right now I'm into like this really like classic rock, like shook me on that, you know, like that kind of stuff to work out. I don't know why I think it's so funny when I go to like really like different countries and be like, America. But not really rituals. I mean, like there's like, I'll do a rest 2 days before and basically like an explosivity kind of warm up just to get your nervous system primed the day before. But it's the same warm up pretty much every time you go. I mean, the ritual is the warm up. I think the ritual is the movement. So I think like when it's showtime, like you can turn your brain off, because that's usually when like you'll see people choke in performances, when you can tell that you're thinking about stuff, and like you just need to be able to reproduce the same movement.
Right.
So I'd say the movement is the ritual, other than just like, I try to have as much fun as possible. It's really easy to get stressed in majors, and so yeah, I like to do stupid playlists. Yeah, do like a lot of face masks. Like just like a lot. I watch a lot of Netflix. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you were recently competed in Lima, as you had mentioned, and you won the silver medal.
Yes, I did. And I brought it.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Do you remember which song you were listening to before that?
Oh my gosh, it was like, I don't know, probably something stupid, to be honest.
Yeah, so I guess while you're on the road with that, I mean, is there any do you have like a favorite snack of some sort?
USA does a really good job feeding us, like making
You
sure
mentioned there was McDonald's at which?
at the game. So McDonald's is randomly a global sponsor, and Rio was crazy because like
Interesting choice.
yeah, for sure. Rio was weird because like the fruit was really good, and like South American fruit's like magical and beautiful, but everything else as far as the food was horrible. So when the McDonald's line like progressively got longer as each day passed. But I would say like I like to pack like a lot of those immuno tabs, but if I could just pack like cases of kombucha with me, and I know like you're either team kombucha or not. Like there's
a hard line.
There's no like give or take it. Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something that I'd like to have, but it's really hard. I think like certain athletes are really strict with diet, but for me it was like being super rigid. Like food alone, sometimes like you can go crazy, but just try to be as flexible as possible.
Yeah.
Eat something green at some point.
You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah. But
so I think we're going to switch over to questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand, and somebody with a microphone will find you.
Thank you so much for being here. And one of my questions is, during your education phase, did you ever get bullied? And if so, how did you handle those situations?
Yeah. It's so funny. I just recently started talking a little bit more about bullying in regards to my story, which we actually just dropped one last pick last in gym class. And so I was like the adult version of bullies or haters. That's what I'm calling them. I dealt with it a little bit when I got done with chemo, and like we were just kids, and so kids are like ruthless. Like kids are the worst. And like I got teased a lot about my leg, but I think the leg thing didn't bother me because it was like my ticket out of cancer land. I started getting teased for like I played sports and hung out with the boys, and so like that was definitely like it was like you start getting bullied based on your character, and eventually I haven't talked about this a lot, but eventually I ended up like getting threats via. So I'm 30, so this is like before MySpace. We all had teen live journals for a class, and so on DSL. So like it took a really long time, or not even DSL, it was the dial-up. It took a really long time to do any journal entry, and so there'd be girls that would just write these horrible things about me, and I found them, and I would read them, and like it's crazy because like the thing with online bullying now is like you're almost like addicted to seeing people say mean stuff about you. Like you have to turn it off, and I didn't have the maturity to know that at 13, so I would see it and then just like let it fester. My mom finally caught me. She was like, "What are you looking at?" And I ended up having to change schools because it was like threats and a bunch of crazy stuff. And there's only so much. I think like I don't feel like we have great coping skills yet for dealing with bullies. I think so much of it really comes to educating ignorance, and being ignorant doesn't mean that you're wrong or bad or evil. It just means that you didn't know something, and then you just react emotionally to it. And I mean, more than anything, it's education, and it's hard. I mean, like there's a hard balance because like you can educate people. I don't think it's a child's job to educate anybody else. I think that like us as adults, like we could step up and do a better job just educating the community, because that's a vulnerable position to put any kid, especially somebody that faces adversity, something different than you. But that's hopefully what I'm doing now, trying to be the adult that would have been super clutch to have when I was working on my live teen journal.
Do you find yourself looking at things written about you online still?
Not really. I'm just like a little too busy right now, and like right now you can like block stuff and like delete. Yeah, I'm like as soon as I learned that, I'm like not here for any negativity. No.
I have a question. What was your degree in college when you went to college?
Yeah.
What degree did you?
I ended up graduating with. So I wanted to do international studies, and then I just decided I wanted to get out of college as fast as possible. So I ended up getting my degree in Spanish, and then I got a minor in French, and I got a minor in international studies with an emphasis on public health.
And my second question is, do you get to imagine your life as an able-bodied from time to time? You say, what would I have been if this didn't happen to you?
I don't think that profoundly into it. Every now and then I'd be like, man, it'd be nice to like walk out of the shower or like walk up from bed and go to the bathroom in the middle of the night instead of making it a full production with legs and stuff. But I have thought about it. It's just like, it's so crazy because my cancer experience shaped who I am, and now like my job, now what I'm doing is so much because of it. I think like essentially who I was as a person would have been the same, but I don't think that I would have like blossomed or turned into the potential that I could have been if I hadn't had faced that at such a young age and used it as a tool for growth. I don't know, maybe I would be, who knows, doing something boring. I'm sorry, like nothing like this.
One more question right here.
Yeah, I have a question about the material used for the runner's leg. I was wondering like if there is any advantage or disadvantage, in competitions you compete, where one person uses a certain type and material. So how does the Olympic Committee regulates that?
I love these kinds of questions because this is something I know about. I can like nerd out all day. So primarily the performance prosthetics, they do running blades, and so those are primarily made out of carbon fiber. How they attach is all different. Some people like pure suction. I've been using elevated vacuum. So the suction is when you push the air out and then you close the valve. Vacuum is when you put your limb in, it pulls your tissues to the socket so you stay globally one size. And that's worked out well for me for travel. Coming from Colorado, like altitude, being a person, eating too much salt now at 30, like your volume is just like always fluctuating. There's a whole bunch, but primarily it's like for running and stuff, everybody's on carbon fiber blades for now until the technology changes. My running knee is probably, I know there's a lot of titanium parts. I think there's something about like the anti-corrosive properties, so it's like waterproof. I've learned a lot through just experience and not actually from science at all. So if I sound like I'm just talking words in science and don't know what I mean, like that's actually accurate. But like, I know this one has a lot of titanium in it because I actually am on a military grade prosthetic that is a microprocessor in it. But it also has the inductive charging. Thanks, Qualcomm, for that. And a bigger battery. So there's like water resistance. This is actually waterproof, so I do a lot of water training in this as well. And am able to just come out of the water and walk, which is like, my glimpse into two-leg life, which it's kind of nice. I see why you guys go to the beach so much.
I was gonna say straight to the beach.
Oh my God, yeah. It's great. No wonder why you guys go. But yeah, I mean, there's so many things. There's alignment changes you can make. There's like just suspension alone. There's a lot of things in order to get greater force out. So, go ahead.
Like the best, it's the best out there when you're competing, and not someone else doesn't have an advantage over you.
That's really hard to say because there's also like, as far as the amputee category, there's people with longer limbs, there's people, so longer levers, you have more force, and then also just like the fact that they have more muscles in their limb. We're lucky to come from a country where like those things are more easily accessible, and that's something that I like to talk about as far as para, is like, my greatest fear for para is that it's just gonna turn into the privilege Olympics, what countries can afford what. The fact that I compete against people that have polio in 2019 is like mind-blowing. Basically, like, I mean, there's like contracts and agreements you can have with prosthetic manufacturers. There's basically like top three like global manufacturers that come out with the most competitive stuff, but it's like the less sexy part of sport where it's like, it's business, you have to make sure you're on the best quality, but it's just like able-bodied as far as like Nike contracts, Adidas, those big heavy hitters, ASICS, stuff like that, where you need to make sure that your stuff is top quality. And that's the cool thing about para now, is we're coming into a world where the sport started as, as the veteran wheelchair games, but now it's turned into a really elite, like intense sporting event where this is your full-time job. You can't afford to do other things. You have to train in order to be competitive. So it's just a part of the job at this point to make sure all your equipment is top-notch.
Does Paralympics have like a standard for things like this, or I guess a limitation? Like you can't have something beyond this?
Yeah, there has to be things that have been commercially, things have to be, your device has to be commercially available within 6 months before you compete. So like it has to be globally and commercially available. For the bilaterals, you can't be too tall. Like there's a certain height requirement. There's a bunch of different things like that, but we're still very much navigating a better, appropriate way to do that.
Yeah. So I think we are out of time for questions, but we do have a raffle for, I believe it is a set of headphones.
Yeah, you guys have dope gifts.
So Lacey, would you mind grabbing a ticket?
Yeah, you guys get your tickets out. Is it people also streaming too?
No, it's just people here.
See, you guys are the real winners.
If it is your ticket, if you mind just raising your hand, and then you can meet Sarah on the stage over here.
There's Sarah. Oh God, oh God. Okay, I'm gonna read all the numbers. 476859. Oh, was it one of the ones that left? Ooh.
Potentially.
Here, we'll do it one more time. 476859.
All right, we'll do the next one.
Just kidding, okay. I'll get that later. I'll pick it up. I'm sorry, I just wanted it to be dramatic. It felt good. Oh, it's in the chair. Okay. 476959.
Uh-oh.
Dang, maybe you guys are just putting tickets in here. Okay. Third one's the charm. 959? No. Oh, dang. Okay. All right. This one's it. This one's you. Okay. 476988.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, I can read numbers though, right? Like, okay, I'm like, I can do this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. 4, 7, 6, 8, 6, 3.
Yeah.
Woo! We got one.
All right, I think we have one more.
Sorry for screaming into the microphone.
And we have one more prize.
Okay, here we go. 4, 7, 6, 8, 4, 9. I can't handle the pressure. Okay. Oh, dang, okay. All right. 4, 7, 6, 8, 5, 6. Okay. You know, people are just dumping the tickets in and then leaving. You gotta stay. Okay. 4, 7, 6, 9, 1, 5. Woo! We did it.
All right, so thank you, Lacey. So for everyone here who's here with us, we do have Italian food, which I hear is your favorite.
You know.
Outside on the lawn, so feel free to join us. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Now it seems to me some fine things have been laid upon your table, but you only want the ones that you can't get. Desperado, oh, you ain't getting no younger. Your pain and your hunger are driving you home. And freedom, oh, freedom, well, that's just some people talking. Your prison is walking through this world all alone. Don't your feet get cold in the wintertime? The sky won't snow and the sun won't shine. It's hard to tell the nighttime from the day. You're losing all your highs and lows. Ain't it funny how the feeling goes away? Desperado, why don't you come to your senses? Come down from your fences. Open the gate. It may be raining, but there's a rainbow above you. You better let somebody love you. You better let somebody love you before it's too late.